right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekend. Just a minute late getting started, having some slight technical difficulties, but what else is new? And as I say every week, what a week. Quite a big one this week, a number of pretty high-profile stories to get through. Before we get started, thank you all for joining us. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here. So, we'll go ahead and get started. It's been a busy week, as I say. There was obviously the big EthCC conference in Paris that Crypto Briefing was privileged enough to attend, so we'll hear a little bit about that from Christian in a moment, who was invited to be there. There was also, in broader news this week, obviously yesterday there were some pretty aggressive moves made by the SEC. A day or two before that, there was a notable Bitcoin dump from a notable holder of Bitcoin, and as well as a few inside trading charges brought by the Department of Justice against some at least one former Coinbase employee. So, but despite all of this, the win seemed to be in the sales this week. Markets performed relatively well, at least compared to what we have seen in the past. So it seems like no bad news can get us down. So why don't we get started with Paris? Christian, you were fortunate enough to be on the ground in Paris this week, and you saw a number of notable speakers, VB among them. What was it like? Tell us what you saw. What were the big stories to come out of that? And man, how was it?
Yeah, sure. VB was one of the speakers. But yeah, in general, just for some context, I guess, this was like my first Ethereum conference. Pretty fun to attend as like someone who kind of has been following Ethereum probably closer than other ecosystems really for, several years. And it's kind of like the main asset I hold. A few notable takeaways. I mean, there was a Vitalik talk, which was definitely kind of, as you would expect, the most attended talk, and the one that kind of sort of anchored the week, I guess. And in that, he sort of spoke about the long-term future for Ethereum was the theme of it, and it was kind of detailing, obviously, like the upcoming merge, but then steps beyond that is what he previously called several phases. So the surge, the verge, and the purge following the merge. And these basically refer to stuff like sharding, adding like stateless clients to increase decentralization, and removing old data and moving it to somewhere like the graph to sort of streamline the blockchain. So he spoke at length about this, and it was very much, the vibe was kind of, even after the merge, ETH won't be complete. There are going to be, he basically said it's going to be 55% complete after the merge, and there are going to be some pretty notable kind of changes to come over the next, say, 3 years, and then beyond that, he sees things as slowing down and thinks it's very important that it will kind of reach a point where there is just less development and less of the kind of building that there is now. Something that was kind of like easy to miss from this talk, but really was, I guess, a key theme he was talking about, was when he's talking about kind of stripping things back in like 3 years' time, or he didn't give an exact time frame, but in a few years' time, kind of hinted at stuff like the idea of being able to stake ETH from a mobile phone. So obviously that's not really viable today, but what he was saying is that it will kind of be so much more like accessible with like running a node, that he kind of wants it to be just sort of something that anyone can do from just like a regular device. Now how it gets there, there are several steps to that. But he also kind of drops hints. I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but it was something we all sort of pondered on afterwards. He was talking about how the set amount for staking ETH was originally going to be 1,500 or so ETH, which is obviously a lot. That's even in today's depressed market, that's it's like $1.5 million. And it's currently 32, right? So that's like the amount that you need to set up your own. But he was kind of very subtly hinting that it could decrease again in the future, because this would essentially make it more decentralized by just opening up access to more people, really. And it makes sense in a way, because if you're one of these people that believes that ETH can potentially become $1 trillion network, that would mean that one ETH costs $10,000. And so to have 32 is like pretty significant and difficult. Will be difficult to, like, more difficult than it is today to get in a few years. So if the price goes up and more people are using it, it makes sense that like the limits for staking could go down. So yeah, that was Vitalik's talk, and he kind of rounded it out with the analogy short-term pain for long-term gain. It was great to see him speak. Other than that, I guess other sort of takeaways I got from it was just attending the events. Very much, you meet a lot of people who are basically just ETH devotees, and I don't sort of mean this in like a maximalist way, as people often say about, for example, certain members of like the Bitcoin community. This is more like there are a lot of people who have just kind of like chosen that Ethereum is kind of the ecosystem that they stick with, and it's so vast that they sort of spend all their time there. Met quite a few people like that who, it's not necessarily that they don't rate stuff like Avalanche or Solana or even, BNB chain. It's more like they maybe found Ethereum quite early, and it was obviously the first one to sort of show all of this promise, and it's grown at quite like an astonishing rate over these last several years. And they've kind of just stuck with it and been pretty loyal to it. So yeah, that was definitely something that I kind of took from it as well. And yeah, it was also pretty good to see. I mean, this is something that's often said about conferences, and especially the ETH ones, but there wasn't much talk of the kind of price. And ETH was actually rallying this week as well. So up about 40%. Obviously off like, some pretty heavy lows, and it's still very much down from its high. But yeah, it didn't really feel like there were people kind of, massively talking about the price and stuff. And I think that's a good sign. There were several announcements that came out of it as well. So something that Vitalik mentioned that he was pleased to see was like developments in the layer 2 space, and had several projects, including Polygon and ZK Sync, announced their own like developments in the ZK rollup world, like ZK EVM stuff, which too complex to go into in detail here, but basically just ways of scaling Ethereum better and onboarding more users in the future. And the fact that there were several of these at the same event, like 3 of these kind of announcements, is if you want to support Ethereum, it's like pretty good to see, because it just shows that there'll be competition between them, and it will push them each to sort of work harder and come up with sort of better solutions to obviously the scaling problem, which like no one has really solved. I was speaking to someone from Starkware yesterday, and they kind of echoed that sentiment that they're pleased that there are each of these announcements coming out, and it wouldn't be good if it was just them, and that they sort of have good relations with these other teams as well. So yeah, pretty good week all around, and fun to sort of meet these people doing different things in the space, and see how it all pieces together. I would say as well, it definitely feels like having gone to this and sort of heard Vitalik speak about it as well. Anyone who's like writing off the merge at this point or assumes that it's not coming should probably reconsider their stance, because I think we can expect this in weeks now, and that could be fairly significant for ETH and Ethereum.
Thanks, Christian. I want to, first of all, a little bit jealous that you got to spend the week in Paris, but more importantly, let's talk a little bit about the merge. I don't think we talked much about it at all last week, but in the meantime, we all know by now that there is at least a tentative set date in September. I think it's the 19th. That kind of provides. Seems to be correlated with the rally this week. You mentioned, Christian, that naysayers about the merge should think twice based on what you saw this week in Paris. Could you say a little bit more about what people were saying that indicate to you that this is really happening and soon?
Yeah, I would clarify, when I say this, I don't mean like, if you doubt that, the price is going to go up. That's not what I mean. Right. Even though there are a lot of people that think that. It's more like Vitalik had a whole presentation about sort of, it was like 40 minutes about the upcoming roadmap. And it was like, the merge is just the first step. And he was basically, I think he literally said on the stage, so he's quite a good speaker, Vitalik, and he said, like, how many of you don't want proof of stake to happen? And, like, no one put their hand up. And it's like, okay, good, because it's happening either way, kind of thing. And that was like, everyone laughed, and it was sort of like, he's saying, that's as clear a confirmation as you can get, right? That it's like, this is, like, very close. I think it was really just from hearing him speak about it, and sort of delivering the idea of this being kind of just the first step of this, what he called a long and complicated transition, I think were his exact words. Obviously beyond this, there's like sharding and the various other stages I just spoke about. September 19, maybe not exactly then, but certainly before the end of the year.
So are you guys watching September 19th like hawks, or are you? I'd like to open this up to the room. Christian seems pretty sure it's going to happen, at least close to when they say it's going to happen, possibly imminently. Nivesh, what do you think? Are you as optimistic as Christian is?
Well, yeah, I don't think before that they have set like a particular date. It would be they would just end up saying that it's late 2022 or early 2023, and so I am pretty optimistic it might happen, and but the days, like let's say 18th, 19th and 20th, those are going to be very volatile, and I'm assuming that hackers, white hackers or like opportunists will be surely looking for ways to make money out of this. So really something to look forward to. And yeah, I'm not saying that it won't happen. There might be a delay. There might be something where they announce something on 18th saying that because of one small issue we are delaying the merge by 7 days. And these sorts of things can happen, but overall I'm pretty optimistic that it's gonna happen.
Cool, thanks, Nivesh. And I'd like to turn briefly to Nathan, since we've kind of touched on the idea of we don't really know what the market is going to do around this particular date. I just would like to get some insight. Again, you can't see the future, and neither can any of us. But Nathan, what are you watching for around these dates? And is there any lurking surprise you think we might be turning our eyes away from?
Obviously, thanks for asking me the question. I've actually got my eye on August the 3rd, which is going to be an OPEC meeting. And I know it might not seem very crypto related, but if they agree to any type of output cut, I know it's very difficult for OPEC to agree on anything, but if there were any type of increase in production is what I mean to say. In other words, that would get inflationary pressures down. It would turn the market's view towards, Fed hikes in future. I'm keeping my eye on that because I know that the US does still hold some influence. It's gone over to Saudi Arabia. Supposedly, Biden had an unsuccessful meeting, but we don't know that for sure. What's on the table, and I know that the US has obviously got its own issues with its energy markets and that, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on August the 3rd just in case there's any surprises come from OPEC, because I think that could be something that could trigger a very different look in the market going over the next few months, and it's something that could be a catalyst for a run higher.
Interesting. Okay. So there's some macro conditions to take into consideration as well as, I guess there always are. Did you have more?
No. That's probably the main thing I'm looking at for over the next couple of weeks, apart from the Fed meeting.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. Thanks, Nathan. Before we move on to other topics, I'd like to open this up to the group. Mitchell and Ant have since joined us from the beginning. Do you guys want to give us a quick mic check to let us know you're there?
Yeah, we're here.
Hi, Mitchell.
Hi there.
Hi, Ant. You guys have any thoughts on the merge, or should we just move right along?
Unless maybe because I wasn't in Paris among Vitalik's glorious presence, I'm a little bit more pessimistic because people have been saying that the merge has been going on for a long time. And just my general experience working in software development has indicated that usually there's a lot more problems than you expect, and it takes a lot longer than you expect. So I'm cautiously optimistic. But then again, maybe I'm just being lazy and not doing as much research as I should because I'm cautiously optimistic about most crypto-related stuff.
Just a default disposition, I suppose. Any thoughts?
Not really. I think it's good to... it's really good for the Ethereum crowd to have that get together, and obviously it's a bit like the Bitcoin Maxi event where everybody's really, really into it. They're super bullish. It's really, really good for them to get together, and there's lots of good news stories that come out of it, which is great. And I think it's nice that they've come out with a date to work towards. I think, as Mitchell says, a bit of cautious optimism is healthy, and sort of taking into account Nathan's stories as well. There are other things going on in the world, and in a week or two, we'll be able to step back from the excitement of this week and kind of just see the lay of the land a little bit better then, I think. So yes, it's all good to hear, and let's just see what the rest of the world has got in store in the meantime.
All right, thanks, Ant, and thanks everybody. In the absence of any final thoughts, we'll move right along to the next story of the week. I think maybe we take them in the order that they happen. So a notable, I'll just say it. So it came out, I think it was Wednesday, Tesla's quarterly earnings report that revealed that the company had sold something like 3/4 of its Bitcoin over the last quarter. I don't really know what to say about this. The market didn't seem to react perilously as a result of this. But I guess I just want to open this up to the group. This one is largely pure speculation. What do you guys think is going on? And why? What do you think is the driving force behind this? Just bad market conditions, just trying to cut losses. Mitchell, you run a company. What do you think is going on here?
In terms of people reacting to poor market conditions?
Well, what do you think Tesla's play is here? Are they just taking a loss, or is there something more clever going on? Or
well, I suspect two things. One is tax loss harvesting, and the second is just attempting to make sure that their cash flows look positive for their quarterly. So a large sale of Bitcoins from investing activities can make their earnings per share still look favorable even though their free cash flows per share would be unchanged. So among unsophisticated viewers, it would make their financials look better than they actually are.
I see. This is why I asked you the question. Okay, cool. I mean, is that all there is to it? Like, what do you like? Why the market didn't seem to react? I don't know. Did it react at all, Nathan? Did you notice anything funny that happened in the wake of this news?
I didn't. To be honest with you, I've been looking at the market to do something similar to what it did. So, as a test of how strong this rally is, so I was hoping for a pullback. So, just to explain it in technical terms, as I normally do, and sorry to go into too much detail, but what I was expecting, the market got stuck in a range between 19,000 and 22,500. So, I thought if there's any bad news come out of the earnings call, there was anybody who's in the Discord chat might have seen that somebody dropped a note in there saying before the earnings call with Tesla, are we going to get some fun and games on Tesla, and is there going to be an announcement? So my take is if we're discussing it on the group, then other people are obviously expecting it as well. So maybe there was some bad news that was going to come, and when the Tesla announcement come, it came back to that range low and then it's bounced back again. So I would say that this was just a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe it was a flush out of weaker longs, and we don't know the full story with Musk. I think what I find interesting about Elon Musk is he tends to be ahead of the market, due to obviously his wealth and maybe his connections. He might, be placed in political, geopolitical events and things like that. So he may know things ahead of time. Other people, I mean, you can see when he started to sell his Tesla stock before the stock market come off towards the latter part of this year. He timed that very well, and him getting out of his Bitcoin holdings. So for me, the more interesting part of this is he interested in buying at lower levels? What does he know? Is he like planning to accumulate at 10, or is he out of the market? But as far as I can see, the reaction so far has just been knee-jerk, and the market still looks like it wants to head higher,
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, I'm looking at our story that we ran this week on it. Apparently in the earnings call, which I obviously did not listen to. And sorry, I accidentally started playing it. So apparently Elon Musk's reasoning, or at least his stated reasoning behind this, was that the company had sold quote a bunch of its Bitcoin because of liquidity concerns surrounding China's COVID-19 lockdowns. Does that sound reasonable?
I think so. Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable enough. But I don't know with him. With Elon Musk, you just don't know if it's a cover story or whatever.
Yeah, that's fair.
None of us run a car factory, so yeah, I wouldn't be too quick to sort of dismiss that. I don't know if it's kind of like a recurrent theme in with like Bitcoin, I feel, where there are these people that sort of come in the height of a bull run, often like celebrities, and they're all kind of, when there's all this noise, they're like kind of shilling essentially and sort of getting behind it, but their conviction really gets tested in these years like this one. And it's the same with these influencers that sort of delete their posts about the stuff they've promoted, or the people that drop NFT collections and then kind of don't go back to it. Maybe it's just a case of that. Maybe he just does have weak hands, We'll see.
Yeah, it could be. Any last thoughts on Tesla before we move on to one of Tesla's nemesis, Navesh?
Yeah, I was just saying that maybe it's like their theory didn't play out, because Tesla bought Bitcoin, I think, just around the time the COVID bull run was starting, and they were sort of buying it as an inflationary hedge. And we all see that Bitcoin is just as much as a risk asset as stocks. And besides that, I also think that they are not taking any losses per se, because if you look at the calculations, it'll approximately come to around 30,000, 27,000, 29,700, around that value. So, and they bought for around 32,600 or something like that. So, if you see, and they also sold like right after buying in January 21, they sold some in April, which was in quite a bit of it in profit. So I don't think they booked any losses out of it. Maybe one reason could be that they are not an investment firm. They were not looking to book losses on these things, and I don't know if it was a long-term play or a short-term play, because seems like it that as soon as their portfolio started going in the negative, they just exited it. Maybe it was macroeconomic conditions, or they wanted to improve cash flows, but yeah, they didn't take losses, and it's fair to believe that if the narrative, or if there is an opportunity to invest again, he might do it again. It's totally possible.
He did say that as well, that today he's certainly open to doing it again. So maybe we'll see. Moving on, let's talk about everyone's favorite boogeyman in the space, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which yesterday made I would call them pretty, maybe not quite aggressive, but intimidating moves in at least a few different regards. So we ran 3 stories about the SEC yesterday, and they were because this was a 3-pronged event that happened. So the first one you guys all heard about, the Department of Justice charged a trio of individuals, one of whom worked at Coinbase, for an alleged insider trading scheme. The DOJ says it's the first crypto-related insider trading scheme that I guess has ever been prosecuted. That seems a little late to the party, but if it is what it is, that's from the horse's mouth. So take it for what it is. They were hit with criminal charges, but also just a couple of hours after, or within the next couple of hours, the SEC also announced charges against the same trio of individuals, seeking permanent injunction and basically civil penalties for what they had done, as well as a return of all the money that they had made illicitly and so on. So that was one move the SEC made yesterday. Second one was tangentially related. In the court filings, in this case, the SEC went so far as to list 9 tokens or to claim that 9 tokens listed on Coinbase were in fact securities. And this obviously raises a lot of questions about whether or not the SEC can just sort of make that declaration in a court filing and expect it to stand, or obviously the second story we ran surrounding this yesterday involved the just tidal wave of pushback, but from Coinbase, which filed a petition to basically demand regulatory clarity from the SEC. A representative from the CFTC chimed in to say that this was, enforcement by, or regulation by enforcement, excuse me. And obviously a lot of lawyers on crypto Twitter had much to say as well. And the third thing later in the day was a comment made by SEC Chair Gary Gensler, probably not accidentally, that he made these comments on the same day as the SEC took legal action against perceived criminals. He commented in an interview that crypto lenders were likely under the purview of the SEC, and implied, if not outright said explicitly, implied very strongly that crypto lending firms were going to come under the sway of that regulatory authority. So that's a lot for the SEC to move on in one day. So I'll open it up to the floor. What do we make of this? How do we respond? Is this just business as usual? What do you guys think? I'll start with
warning people of most cryptocurrencies being securities for a long time. I don't think this is that groundbreaking. And I'm kind of surprised that people are finding it so controversial on Twitter. Like, it's really riled up a lot of Bitcoiners that, oh man, the SEC is really taking an aggressive stance. And in my opinion, it seems like the SEC has been pretty passive for the most part up until these last 2 years. So I think that they've actually been a lot more generous with the crypto industry than they would have been if crypto was penny stocks or some other established financial instrument, where this amount of, like a similar amount of malfeasance was going on.
Gotcha.
I would like to add that I just hope, like, I want to see how surprised the market will be when SEC comes at NFTs and they say they are going to be securities. Because I remember last year when we discussed if NFTs were securities or not, we were just looking at these as JPEGs, where a team would just release them out in the open. Maybe you have rights over them or you don't. But there was no concept of a roadmap or something that we expect from the team. So if you take, like, the spirit of the Howey test that SEC upholds for like judging if whether or not an asset is a security, then it sounds pretty obvious that these NFTs which have roadmap and they offer more coins and some earnings, and the idea depends behind who is backing them, then it's clear to me that they might be be seen as securities. So and yeah, as Mitchell said, we like, these concerns have been raised quite a couple of times, and even I think when DeFi tokens started coming up, the like airdrops and such, there was speculation around SEC coming down on them as well. And over the past 2 years, we have seen teams like arming their side with a strong legal team. Aave has done that, Compound has done that, MakerDAO has done that. And so I think the talks are kind of productive right now, and they can directly like go to the SEC. And when lawyers do that, it's different from what entrepreneurs or like product developers can do. So yeah, I would say that it was long due, and there could be more surprises. But the way it's progressing is not hostile to our industry.
Thanks, Navesh, and thanks, Mitchell. I 100% agree with you, Navesh, on the question of NFTs, especially those with roadmaps, which I've spent a lot of time thinking about, the extent to which someone can claim one thing is not true, or is true or not true, just by tampering with the terminology a little bit. And you see that a lot in the crypto space, that will just sort of massage the language a bit and give something a different name. Oh, it's not a security, it's a governance token, even though it may bear all the similarities and hallmarks of a security. We'll just try to hide behind kind of opaque language in order to, to dodge regulators. But I think Mitchell is right. This is long overdue and really not terribly surprising. I thought it was notable that they made all these moves in one day. Do you guys think that was deliberate? Like, that struck me as sending a message, like kind of a salvo. Or do you think I'm reading too much into it, Ant?
Didn't they get, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, didn't the SEC sort of, I don't know, humiliated isn't the right word, but didn't they get a bit of a slap down from somebody? Yes. Yeah, and so I'm not sure if this is them just trying to...
In the Ripple case, they were blocked from... hold on 1 second, because we covered it. I just need to refresh my memory, because I've mainly been following Ethereum for the last week. Yeah, so it was basically a judge said it was hypocrisy for them to they wanted to like hide this certain speech that like I think a former member of the SEC had used, and Ripple was trying to get this out into the open because it would kind of theoretically sort of prove that like support its case that like XRP isn't a security, and the judge of the case basically said that the SEC were like being hypocrites over this, and a lot of people have sort of weighed in on this and said it's like a major win for Ripple.
And I think even a week or 2 weeks before that, wasn't there some sort of politician or somebody who said that responsibility for overseeing crypto or regulation or something of that nature was going to be given to a slightly different organization, or at least suggested it was going to be. So, I mean, if that's the case anyway, it just sort of sounds a bit like they need to hit out at someone in order to prove that they're still around and that they're worth keeping around and that sort of thing. I'm not really too familiar with the names that were in the reports today, the people that they've targeted, but I did notice that there was that aspect to it that they were unfamiliar names. So I was kind of thinking, like, who are these people that they're hitting? It's not like they've gone after someone like Polygon or Solana or whatever is it, and tried to smack those guys down. It seems like they're kind of picking on the little kids. I might be wrong about that because I'm just not familiar with the names, but that lack of familiarity suggests to me that they're kind of smaller people in the space, and they're just kind of like picking on the little kids, picking out some easy targets to try and make themselves still seem relevant. Perhaps I'm not sure if that is the case, but
I mean, there have been, they've done some what some would describe as sort of dirty tricks in the past. So they went after Coinbase over the Lend product it was launching, which was like promising 4% yield around this time last year, and it was like they sort of did it with like a week's notice or something. They said, I think Coinbase wrote to them and were like, yeah, we're doing this. And they just said, if you don't, we'll sue, like a week before it launched. And obviously Coinbase is like, pretty massive sort of firm in the space. If there's kind of what Jacob is alluding to, like the idea that they're sort of like concocting a scheme and sitting on a table being like, oh, how can we really rile those crypto enthusiasts? I wouldn't put it past them based on stuff that we know from the past. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little conspiratorial, but it's a semi-opaque industry headed by a board of commissioners. It almost lends itself to conspiratorial conversation. And Anton, reference to something you brought up earlier, the street brawl here is between the SEC and the CFTC, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. And the big question that's being sorted out, and it seems to be not being sorted out very well, is which of these tokens are securities and which of them are commodities. Bitcoin is the only one that we've gotten clear comments from Gensler and others that they believe are commodities. I think, Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the speech that the SEC was trying to hide from the Ripple lawyers, wasn't that something to the effect about Ethereum being a commodity over security, or am I misremembering?
Yeah, no, that sounds. I think it was like a 2015 speech.
Yeah. So there might be some inner disputes over whether or not Ethereum constitutes a security or a commodity, but it seems to be like I haven't seen anything to indicate that they think that any other token is anything but a security. Has anybody seen or read anything to contradict that perspective? They seem to think they might all be.
I mean, it's not true that they all are, because they've actually have issued indications of some tokens explicitly not being securities outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think there was a specific one called Quarters, which got pre-approval from the SEC. That happened a while ago, and I think that there's others. Let me see if I can find the link for that.
Okay, well, Mitchell is waiting for that. Nimesh, did you have any comments, or am I putting you on the spot? On the spot, I see.
Pretty much. I would say that, they all are pretty much securities, but going by the past, like the charges that were filed or the settlement that happened, we shouldn't be too worried, because we have seen all they do is slap a fine. And if it depends on the founders and the people who are managing the investments and such. So if they have managed to keep that into account and still have money for development, then I think they charge 9 tokens. I think 1 or 2 might survive the next bull run. So not to be dismissive of all the 9, and they could just pay the fine and move on with their business as usual.
Right. The one comment I saw from a crypto Twitter lawyer was the idea that, for these 9 tokens, for it to be sorted out whether or not they are actually securities, they're basically going to have to go through 9 quote unquote mini trials in order to establish case by case if each individual token is a security or not. And that sounds very time consuming and very expensive, and I'm not sure. I mean, you guys, I know there's no lawyers in the room, but is that the way that this is going to play out, just on case by case basis, or do you think there's going to be something more superseding coming down the line? And I'll get your guys' thoughts on this before we move on to the next topic.
I think that would depend on the team's ability to handle legal fees and like how fast are they willing to settle the case, or how ferocious the SEC is. But definitely, like some teams which have the money, they'll be looking to make a name for themselves, and they'll just go ahead and file a separate lawsuit defending this one. So yeah, it can happen.
Well, thanks, Nimesh. Any closing thoughts on the subject?
I'll just say that it's kind of worth highlighting in specifically the Coinbase case. I know I just spoke about Coinbase, so I found this quite interesting because from what I saw, was potentially even just a tweet from Kobe, like the big crypto Twitter personality, up-only host, raising it that there was like possibly insider trading within Coinbase, because he looked at like on-chain analytics, and that was cited in like the court documents, and this is now obviously like sort of with the SEC and Justice Department. So I found that quite interesting. I know Coinbase has had a lot of problems over the last year, from its questionable asset listings to failed NFT launch to basically getting overtaken by FTX on every metric. Quite interested to see what happens with this. And I guess on that note as well, it's worth thinking about kind of not only this case, but stuff like the former product manager at OpenSea, who got caught trading the NFTs and like using his inside information to basically dump on the public and make like a few ETH here and there. It seems like they're taking like a pretty hard stance on this stuff now. I expect we'll probably see more of these cases coming out, especially with all the kind of rugs and stuff that happened in NFTs over the last year. We know they're quite slow to move, but I think we can expect many more of these over the next, 2 years. even if there's no like NFT bull market for a long time. I would expect to see many more of these stories coming out.
Yeah, thanks, Christian, and thanks for bringing up the point that, and I can't believe we almost glossed over it, that the Coinbase insider trading was first pointed out, at least as far as we know, was pointed out by Kobe on Twitter, and it is cited in the court documents, not only cited as evidence, but as like catalytic evidence that directed the course of the investigation. So, pretty wild.
On that note as well, like Crypto Briefing got cited in the court documents for 3 arrows. I don't know if everyone saw this, but like we saw that last week. And there was a lot of stuff on Twitter that was kind of quoted on there. But yeah, it wasn't just us. They had articles from Crypto Briefing, like the blog, and other publications as well. And yeah, it was quite a shock to sort of see that last week. But yeah, maybe go and look for it for anyone who missed it.
Yes, we'll share the story that contains the court documents again. It was strange, like combing through those documents as a primary source and then finding our own publication there in the addenda, which is just a pretty wild experience. But that's actually a pretty good dovetail into our last story of the day. It's a story from this morning, so it's hot and fresh. The founders of Three Arrows Capital, after a lengthy silence, gave an interview to, I think it was Bloomberg that ran it, and gave us a lot. I'll turn this over to Christian as well, but the broad strokes here is basically that they're cooperating with, or they claim to be cooperating with their creditors, and while they are in a currently undisclosed location, they claim to be in transit to Dubai, though they're being very hush-hush about their travel plans out of fear for their own safety and the safety of their families, essentially. What else? What were some of the fine points that I've missed here, Christian? I know you also did a kind of a follow-up piece with Arthur Hayes' reaction to this. You just want to unpack what they said and what his response was?
Yeah, sure. So, their first interview since they went bankrupt, gave it to Bloomberg. I guess, the essence of it was, this might sound harsh to say, but it was sort of them, in a sense, feeling sorry for themselves a bit. That was kind of the vibe I got from it, and a lot of what I read. Who sort of defended a lot of the stuff they did, and kind of said that he felt like it was kind of like a lot of people would come at them with pitchforks just because they were known as the kind of the whales in the past. So I think he was kind of saying that, people sort of enjoy seeing the giants fall, as it were. He didn't say that exactly, but more or less. That was one side of it. Kyle was talking about how this, what I can see becoming a meme at some point. He said the whole situation is regrettable. It's just kind of like the sort of thing that I imagine we'll be doing the rounds for a long time now. They kind of said that they really did believe in the idea that, things would keep going up. And that was sort of the problem when they had all that leverage on and they were borrowing all this money from the likes of Genesis and Voyager. It was great for them and it was great for their sort of creditors as well, because obviously prices were going up for a year, and the market was like parabolic, but when it went the other way, it collapsed very suddenly, and it was really, I guess, the terror situation and the sort of very sudden collapse of Luna that sort of was their downfall. And Sue admitted that they didn't really they didn't anticipate that things could wind down to zero. and much less as fast as they did. It happened in 4 days. So yeah, I guess it's just a case of poor risk management and poor due diligence there. And yeah, that was one thing sort of Arthur Hayes picked at when he sort of read through it. I'll get onto that in a second. But yeah, importantly as well, they sort of said that a lot of the allegations, like the idea that they've been ignoring liquidators, just isn't true. So they outright denied that stuff. And yeah, they basically said also that they are heading to Dubai, but they're pretty cautious because they've received death threats and this kind of thing, and they sort of fear for safety. And I can't believe that, to be honest. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And as much as what they did, they made a lot of mistakes. You can definitely see that there is a very apparent sort of point at which they were sort of adulated for a long time, and then suddenly everyone turned on them. And this happened with Do Kwon as well. A lot of people, didn't like him before Terra collapsed, but it was suddenly after he was enemy number one, public enemy number one, right? And there is just kind of this herd mentality. I don't like Do Kwon, right? And he threatened, his company threatened to sue us over an April Fool's Day article. And 3 hours obviously screwed up in many ways. But it's pretty dangerous to fall into the kind of mentality of sort of laughing at these figures in some way when there are these downfalls, especially when it kind of damages the whole ecosystem. I think it's worth considering that maybe. But that's obviously not a view that Arthur Hayes took, because he was very quick to tear this apart this afternoon. So yeah, he kind of mocked, mainly Sue's quotes. There were parts where Sue sort of hinted at things like, we're not we live pretty normal lives. It's not that extravagant, even though we had this money. And Arthur kind of was laughing at that and saying he only had 2 luxury houses and 1 yacht. Come on, you should feel sorry for him, kind of thing. And also sort of laughed at them for not sort of checking the Terra white paper thoroughly enough. So yeah, lots of controversy there. Story still very much ongoing, and I expect it will be for some time. Because wouldn't be surprised if SBF's warning that there are many more exchanges that are secretly insolvent is true. Whether or not directly tied to 3 Arrows, we'll see. But yeah, I think that covers the kind of main points.
Thanks, Christian. And it kind of bugs me, the idea that they might be in physical danger. And while we've been very hesitant to use the phrase on the run to describe Suzu and Kyle Davies, because we obviously can't get inside their minds, and their plans are not immediately apparent to us. But they have been very surreptitious about their location, and whatever they've said about, being communicative with their creditors, we have sworn affidavits to say otherwise. So that being said, it sucks that they're receiving death threats. I'm all for there being accountability in the space, but it's like Christian said, this sort of mob mentality towards, or this sort of the way this herd mentality goes from adulating someone one day to despising them the next day, and how quickly that can spiral into threats of violence and real infringements on someone's personal safety, when there are legal channels for sorting out accountability as well. Anyway, I'll hop off my soapbox. Does anybody else have any thoughts on Kyle and Zoo? Yeah, and
I think it's a bit of a random thought, but if they're still if they're still in transit, I want to know how they're traveling.
Oh yeah, they won't tell, I'm sure.
No, I suspect they're walking if they've been at it for this long. I've actually just looked it up on Google Maps, and by my calculations, they've just crossed into northern India from Nepal. It's a nearly 8,500 kilometre journey. Yeah. So that's where they are anyway. If anyone's wondering.
All right. You heard it here first.
There you go.
All right. We got a few minutes here, so let's just turn to our weekly market roundup, which we obviously do every week. We've touched on it a bit so far. Nathan shared his insights into the OPEC meeting going on early August, and obviously the merge news has had some bullish impulse on Ethereum's price. What else is there to take into consideration, Nathan? What have you been working on, and what should we be looking for in the next week or so?
Yeah, I guess everything's going to be about the Federal Reserve meeting coming up next week. I think today market is digesting the PMI services data from the United States. So the Nasdaq has had a great week. So Bitcoin's been closely tracked with the Nasdaq. If the Nasdaq's gone higher, it's really benefited Bitcoin. I think we've gone from 11,500 all the way up to 12,600 in a really quick time on the Nasdaq, and that's really helped Bitcoin. So they're very closely correlated. So what the Nasdaq is basically doing at the moment is basing a lot of its assumptions on the fact that weak economic data is going to equal a less aggressive Federal Reserve. And if people are not, going to be expecting these aggressive rate hikes, then they might be looking at the Federal Reserve slowing down. Hence, it could benefit stocks, and that's one of the potential reasons why the Nasdaq has been moving higher and Bitcoin's been moving higher. So today we got, I think, the weakest services data in the United States. It contracted 47 reading instead of a 52, which means that the service sector in America has gone into contraction. So this is why we've seen a little bit of a pullback in the market today in Bitcoin and also the Nasdaq. So that kind of sets up an interesting week next week, whether the Federal Reserve are going to touch upon the US economy is starting to slow down, because it's got pretty much contrarian data. So the jobs sector and the retail sales, which are hugely volatile every month, they've basically been okay, but the housing sector is showing some signs of slowing down, and that's normally not a good sign. And the PMI data that we got today is not great. So if that causes the Fed to think, okay, we need to be less aggressive with our rate hikes, it's probably going to benefit Bitcoin next week. And there's a lot of complementary technicals for the market pulling higher, as well as the strong dip buying that we're seeing. And funny enough, the pattern that we're seeing in Bitcoin, this Wyckoff pattern that I've been mentioning. So the two key points about that is prevalent pretty much across every single cryptocurrency that's in the top 20. They've all got Wyckoff patterns. Ethereum looks like it's pretty much played out due to the merge news, this Wyckoff pattern, but Bitcoin and many others still haven't played out to anywhere near their full potential. So you're still midway through the pattern reaching its full projections if they're correct. So this leads me to believe that we're probably going to continue to push higher next week, as long as we hold above 22,500, and as long as Bitcoin closes the week above its 200-week moving average, which is going to be very important this week, then I think we can see Bitcoin move to 26,000, assuming the Federal Reserve doesn't shock everybody and say that they're going to continue with this a very, very aggressive rate hike. So I think next week there's certainly the potential for the market to continue to move higher.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Some sunny news, or at least some sunny, not quite predictions, but outlooks. We are on the hour, everyone. Do I have any last thoughts on the market, on 3AC, on the SEC, on anything we've discussed today before we take it into the weekend?
yeah, just watching Eve closely. A bit gutted. I did kind of buy close to the bottom, but probably not enough, and not at the very bottom. So yeah, watching that, hoping for something close to 1,000 or lower even again, and yeah, also the NFT space, because as we've mentioned before, is kind of often trades uncorrelated, and there's a lot of sort of exciting generative art and this kind of stuff coming out if you're paying close attention to it. I know that's something Ant is doing as well, whether it's on FX Hash or art blogs, and yeah, trying to pay as much attention as possible, and yeah, sort of capitalize, even though things might feel like they're in a downward trend. There's always kind of an opportunity somewhere.
There's always an opportunity somewhere. And on that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us this week. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks to our panel for joining us to chat and for sharing your insights. As always, have a great weekend and take care, everybody.